A single spoken word once held the power to build a universe. Across countless ancient cultures, language was not a simple tool, but a cosmic force, capable of shaping reality itself. This journey uncovers the lost art of divine speech, revealing how our ancestors believed words could create worlds, bind fates, and command gods. You will gain a profound new understanding of language, one that challenges everything we assume about communication today. We will explore why a secret name could control a deity and how a simple promise was considered unbreakable magic. What hidden power do you think still lingers in the words we use every day? Before anything existed, there was only a profound and silent emptiness. Then a single sound echoed through the void, and the cosmos burst into being. This is the foundational myth found across the world, the story of creation through divine utterance. In these ancient accounts, speech is not a later invention for describing reality. It is the very tool used to build it. The ancient Hindu texts known as the Rig Veda describe the entire universe emerging from a single, sacred vibration, the syllable Am. This was not a word with a simple meaning, but a fundamental frequency from which all matter and consciousness unfolded. In the same way, the book of Genesis begins with darkness and a formless deep, until God commands, "Let there be light." And there was light. This is not a passive observation, it is an active performance. The word itself is the event that brings reality into existence. This concept fundamentally reshapes our understanding of language. For these ancient cultures, a word was not a mere label we assign to an object that already exists. The word was the generative force that called the object into being. It was a creative act, a kind of magic where sound and intention combined to manifest physical form. This positions language as a primary cosmic power, the blueprint upon which existence is patterned. The ancient Greeks had a word for this principle, logos. It meant more than just a word. It meant the underlying rational principle of the universe, the divine reasoning that gives order to all things. To speak a true word was to align yourself with this cosmic order, to participate in the ongoing work of creation. How different this is from our modern view, where words are often seen as weak substitutes for action. For our ancestors, the right word spoken with the right intention was the most powerful action of all. This belief in the creative power of sound naturally leads us to the figures who were said to master it completely, the gods and sages for whom speech was a direct extension of their will. The authority of a god was often measured not by physical strength, but by the power of their voice. A deity whose breath could sculpt mountains and whose whispers could set the stars in motion operated on a different plane of existence. In the rich tapestry of Egyptian belief, this concept finds its ultimate expression in the god Ptah. He did not conquer chaos through battle, but through pure intellect and utterance. The ancient texts describe him conceiving the entire cosmos within his heart, the seat of thought and intention. Then he gave it physical form through the command of his tongue. For the Egyptians, this established a profound truth that thought and speech are the twin engines of reality. What is imagined inwardly must be spoken outwardly to become manifest. This is creation as a sacred utterance, a divine speech act that bridges the world of ideas and the world of substance. Far to the north, a different kind of mastery over the word emerged. The Norse god Odin sought power not from birthright, but through agonizing personal sacrifice. He hung for 9 nights on the world tree, wounded by his own spear, to gain knowledge of the runes. These were not mere letters, they were primal symbols representing fundamental forces of the cosmos, from ice and fire to death and fate. To know a rune's shape was one thing, but to know the spoken spell that activated it was to hold its power directly. Odin's quest shows that this linguistic authority could be earned, but always at a great cost. These divine figures, Ptah and Odin, embody a universal archetype, the master of the word. Their supreme authority is demonstrated through their capacity to name, to command, and to impose a lasting order upon the formless through declaration alone. It suggests that in the beginning, before any tool or weapon, was the voice, and if the spoken word is the fundamental tool of the gods, then the most potent words of all must be the secret names by which they themselves are known. If a god's greatest power was their voice, then their greatest vulnerability was their name. This belief that a secret, true name held the very essence of a being appears across the ancient world as one of the most potent forms of magic. To know this hidden name was to hold a piece of the deity's soul, granting you the authority to summon, command, or even wound them. The most famous story comes from Egypt, where the goddess Isis desired the power of the aging sun god Ra. He possessed countless public names, but one, his true name, held the source of his might, and he guarded it jealously in his heart. Isis did not challenge him with force. Instead, she watched and waited. As Ra grew old, a venomous serpent bit him, and the great god fell into agony. Isis approached, offering to heal him with her magic, but she explained that her spells required the power of his true name to work. Writhing in pain, Ra finally relented. He whispered his secret name to her, and with that knowledge, Isis gained power over the sun itself. She healed him, but she also bound him to her will forever. This was not a theft of a physical object, but a theft of identity. The name was not a tag, it was the power. This concept echoes far beyond the Nile. In countless traditions, from the jinn of Arabian folklore to the demons of ancient Mesopotamia, knowing the true name of a spirit allowed a mortal to force it into service, to bind it inside a lamp or a clay pot. This reflects a worldview where language is not an arbitrary set of sounds we agree upon. Words, especially names, are intrinsically and magically connected to the things they represent. They are not just descriptions, they are containers of essence. A name captures the fundamental nature of a person, a god, or a force. To speak it is to touch that nature directly, and to know it is to grasp the reins of control. Why would a simple sequence of syllables be considered so dangerous? Because in these ancient systems, your name was not separate from yourself, it was yourself. To conceal your true name was a basic act of spiritual survival. This profound link between a word and the world it defines naturally gave rise to formal structures designed to harness that power, the precise and ritualized formulas we know as spells and incantations. A spell is not a request, it is a command. It takes the idea of divine speech and packages it into a tool that a mortal can hold. Think of the difference between a casual conversation and the precise, deliberate language of a legal contract or a sacred vow. A spell operates on that same level of formality and consequence. Its power lies in its rigid, unchangeable structure. At its core, a functional spell often contains three critical components. First, it must invoke the proper authority. This is usually done by naming a god or a cosmic principle, like a key that unlocks a specific door in the universe. Second, it states its intention not as a wish but as a declaration of fact, often using what linguists call the performative tense. It does not say, "I hope you are healed." It declares you are healed. It speaks of the desired outcome as if it has already occurred, forcing reality to align with the words. Third, it is almost always bound by rhythm, rhyme, or repetition. This poetic structure is not for artistic flair, it is a focusing mechanism. The steady beat, the resonant sounds, they concentrate the speaker's will into a laser point, making the words themselves into a physical force. We see this in ancient Babylonian exorcism texts where priests would chant long, formulaic incantations to drive out sickness, which was seen as a demonic presence. Every syllable had to be perfect, every name pronounced correctly, or the entire ritual would fail. The words were the weapon. Similarly, Celtic druids were famed for their chants that could stir storms or bless crops. This was not seen as asking the gods for a favor. It was understood as using the correct sonic formula to directly manipulate the forces of nature. The words were the tool. This reveals a crucial distinction between a prayer and a spell. A prayer is a petition sent upward, hoping for a response. A spell is an instruction delivered sideways into the very fabric of the world, expecting an immediate and automatic result. It treats language as a technology, a set of coded commands that, when executed flawlessly, compel a specific change. But what happens when this powerful, binding form of speech is used not to command the elements, but to make a promise between people? If a simple spoken word can shape reality, then a vow given between two individuals must be unbreakable, a truth that leads us to the sacred and terrifying power of the oath. An oath was a cage built from words, and once spoken, you could never leave it. In the world of Norse mythology, a promise was not a casual statement. It was a cosmic contract sworn on a sacred ring like the armband of the god Tyr. To swear such an oath was to weave your own fate into the fabric of the world, and to break it was to tear at that fabric, risking chaos and divine anger that could extend to your entire family or kingdom. The words themselves became the unbreakable bond. This was not a metaphor. A curse operated on the same terrifying principle. When a person who had suffered a deep wrong spoke a curse, they were not just venting anger. They were issuing a decree, a self-fulfilling prophecy that set a chain of events into motion. The spoken words of the curse were believed to take on a life of their own, hunting the target with a grim inevitability, much like a physical law of cause and effect. Think of the Greek myths where a hero might be cursed to kill his own father. No matter how hard he tries to escape his destiny, every step he takes only brings him closer to fulfilling the very words spoken against him. This reveals a profound moral gravity assigned to speech. Your words were not just sounds, they were actions with direct and inescapable consequences. A promise created a tangible obligation, a curse created an inescapable doom. Why would a simple sequence of syllables be granted such irrevocable power? Because in these cultures, a spoken word was not separate from reality. It was an event that altered reality. To speak was to act, and some actions, like a vow or a condemnation, were considered so significant that their effects were permanent. The power of speech was therefore a profound responsibility. It had to be used with care, for a word once released could never be taken back. This immense power, however, created a tantalizing and dangerous possibility. What if you could use these sacred formulas, these reality-shaping words, for your own personal gain, bending the cosmos to your private will? Even the most powerful magic could shatter on a single misspoken syllable. The ancient world understood that divine speech was a double-edged sword, capable of creation but also of catastrophic failure when wielded without perfect precision. A spell was like a key, and if its teeth were even slightly misshapen, the lock would not turn, or worse, it would break entirely. We see this in tales where a hero attempts a resurrection chant but misremembers a single word, calling forth a vengeful spirit instead of a peaceful soul. The power was real, but it was brittle, demanding an exactness that left no room for error. This was the inherent risk in treating language as a technology, a set of coded commands for reality. A single flaw in the code could corrupt the entire program. This danger extended far beyond simple mispronunciation into the realm of rash promises. A vow spoken in anger or haste could become an inescapable prison, demonstrating that the power of a word was not diminished by the speaker's lack of foresight. Consider the Greek king Midas, who eagerly wished that everything he touched would turn to gold. His wish was granted as spoken, but the consequence of his flawed desire was a horror he never anticipated, as his food and even his own daughter turned to cold, lifeless metal at his touch. The divine power fulfilled the literal words of his request, but it was the lack of wisdom behind those words that doomed him. The words themselves were perfect and powerful, but the intention was tragically short-sighted. Sometimes the very act of creation could go awry, producing monsters instead of marvels. The Egyptian creator god Atum was said to have brought forth the first gods through a mighty utterance, but from his spittle, other, less perfect beings also emerged. This suggests that even divine speech was not always perfectly controlled, that creative power could have unintended byproducts, spilling over to form the chaotic and the malformed. A curse, too, could be a treacherous weapon. In many traditions, a curse required not just anger, but absolute moral certainty and rightful authority. A curse spoken unjustly or without the proper standing was believed to rebound upon the speaker with triple the force. The words would fly out, only to circle back and strike the one who uttered them, a victim of their own toxic speech. These are not just stories of magical mishaps. They are profound cautionary tales about the inherent risks of powerful language. They teach that the authority to speak reality into being must be matched by the wisdom to know what to say and the precision to say it correctly. A word was not a toy, it was a loaded weapon that demanded respect and skill. The potential for a slip of the tongue to unravel a life or a kingdom revealed a terrifying truth: that the cosmos was built on a foundation of sound that was both delicate and dangerously potent. If a single flawed word could summon chaos, then its absence, the deliberate and powerful void of silence, must hold a sacred power all its own. Silence was the canvas upon which the first word was painted. After exploring the immense power of spoken commands and binding oaths, we find an equally potent, though quieter, force waiting in the void. Across mystical traditions, the ultimate truths were considered ineffable, too vast to be captured by any sound. The highest reality was a profound silence, a state of pure being accessible only when the chatter of the mind and the world fell completely away. In certain schools of Hindu thought, the sacred syllable Om is not merely a sound to be chanted, but a vehicle to reach a state of transcendental quiet where the soul can perceive what words can never describe. This silence was not an empty nothingness, it was a vibrant field of all potential, the unmanifest source from which all manifest things, including speech, originally sprang. It was the deep, dark, and fertile soil necessary for any creative word to take root and grow. This concept transforms silence from a mere absence of noise into a sacred presence, a form of power all its own. How then could withholding speech be an act of strength? In many myths, a character who guards a secret or refuses to speak a name is not being weak, they are exercising immense control. They understand that some knowledge is too dangerous to be released into the world through sound, that its power lies precisely in its containment. This is the hidden side of the coin, where not speaking a word can be as consequential as shouting one. Think of a master craftsman who refuses to reveal the final ingredient in a legendary recipe, or a deity who keeps the true name of a cosmic force locked within their heart. Their silence is a protective barrier, a way of managing a power too great for common use. We see this dynamic beautifully illustrated in the space between sound and stillness. A single chime rings out clearly only because of the quiet that surrounds it. In the same way, the powerful creative utterances of gods gained their definition and force from the primordial silence that preceded them. The silent void was not defeated by the first word, it was its necessary partner, the receptive womb that gave the spoken command its meaning and impact. This reveals a complete and sophisticated understanding of communication, one that honors both the creative power of sound and the boundless potential of the unspoken. If the most powerful words could shape reality, then the most powerful silences contained the blueprint for all reality yet to come. This ancient dance between sound and stillness, between the spoken spell and the withheld secret, invites a startling question for our own noisy world. What profound potential are we drowning out with our own constant stream of words, and what truths might we hear if we dared to be still? A divine voice echoes from the banks of the Nile to the heart of the Mayan rainforest. While the Egyptian god Ptah conceived and spoke the cosmos into being, another powerful story of creation unfolds across the ocean in the Popol Vuh, the sacred text of the Kayich Maya. Here, the gods do not command with a single, absolute word. Instead, they gather in council, deliberating and experimenting. Their first attempts at humanity, made from mud, dissolve into nothingness. Their second, carved from wood, are mindless and hollow. Only after repeated trial and error do they find the perfect substance, maize, and speak the true, lasting form of humanity into existence. This is creation as a collaborative conversation, a process of finding the right words through dialogue and persistence. The power of speech is still the central tool, but it is a power refined through communal effort and shared intention. On the other side of the world, the Aboriginal peoples of Australia describe a time before time, the dreaming, when ancestral beings journeyed across a formless land. They did not simply speak the world into being, they sang it. With every step, they chanted the names of the animals, the plants, and the landforms, calling them forth from the void. The very contours of the earth, the rivers and the mountains, are the frozen music of their epic songlines. Here, creative speech is not a command or a discussion, but a continuous act of naming and remembrance, a melody that literally composes reality. The common thread is undeniable, a shared human intuition that sound, in the form of a word, a chant, or a song, is a primary creative force. Yet each culture weaves this thread into a unique pattern. For the Egyptians, it is an act of supreme, solitary authority. For the Maya, it is a collective problem-solving endeavor. For the Aboriginal peoples, it is an ongoing, sacred performance that binds the land to its story. What deep, universal human experience could possibly explain such a widespread and persistent belief? Perhaps it is the simple, daily miracle of our own speech. We watch as our words, mere vibrations in the air, can spark joy, cause pain, build alliances, or start wars. Our own limited power of creation through language hints at a greater, cosmic version of the same principle. This shared recognition speaks to something fundamental in our consciousness, a deep-seated understanding that reality is not just described by language, but is in some profound way constructed by it. This ancient belief was not confined to grand myths of origin. It was brought to life and made real through the precise, powerful rituals practiced by every priest and king. The words of a myth were not meant to be read but to be performed. In the heart of ancient Sumer, as the New Year festival began, a priest would stand before the assembled community and begin to chant the Enuma Elish, the epic of creation. He was not merely telling a story about a past event. With every perfectly articulated line, he was reenacting the god Marduk's victory over the primordial sea monster, Tiamat. He was not describing chaos being defeated, he was actively holding it at bay for another year. The ritual was a cosmic maintenance task, and the spoken words were the tools. This was the ultimate operationalization of divine speech, taking the mythological concept and turning it into a practical, lived reality for the entire society. The correct recitation of the sacred text, with every name and every command spoken flawlessly, was believed to generate the same power as the original utterance. It renewed the contract between the gods and humanity, reaffirmed the king's divine right to rule, and ensured the sun would rise and the crops would grow. The past became present through the performance. The line between myth and reality did not just blur, it vanished entirely. The community, listening in a state of collective focus, was not an audience. They were participants in this act of cosmic preservation. Their very presence and attention helped to anchor the ritual's power, binding themselves to the ongoing work of keeping the world orderly and safe. This transforms our understanding of these ancient stories. They were not folklore or simple explanations for natural phenomena. They were functional, necessary scripts for sustaining existence. The spoken word became a timeless agent, a bridge across millennia that connected the people in the city square directly to the moment of creation itself. How did a society ensure that this delicate, vital task was performed without error? It required the rise of a specialized class of individuals, masters of memory and sound, who dedicated their lives to wielding this power. A king would travel for weeks, risking his life and his treasury just to hear a single woman speak a few cryptic words. This was the power of the Ptah, the Oracle of Delphi. Seated on a tripod over a fissure in the earth, breathing in strange vapors, she was believed to become a direct channel for the god Apollo. Her answers, often riddling and obscure, were not considered her own opinions. They were the translated speech of a deity, and cities would go to war or abandon entire campaigns based on her fragmented pronouncements. She was the ultimate human intermediary, a living instrument through which divine will could be audibly perceived. This role was not unique to Greece. In the misty highlands of ancient Ireland, the Celtic bard held a similar, terrifying authority. A master of imbaz, a luminous insight said to be granted by the otherworld, the bard's poetry was not mere entertainment. A satirical verse from a skilled bard could raise boils on a king's face, a literal manifestation of the power believed to reside in his condemnatory words. His praise could ensure a legacy, while his curse could unravel a dynasty. These figures, the prophet, the bard, the shaman, all shared a common purpose. They were not just skilled speakers, they were seen as hollow bones, vessels through which a higher, cosmic voice could flow into the human world. Their own personalities were suppressed to make room for this greater power. The Pythia entered a trance, the bard sought a state of poetic frenzy, the shaman journeyed in spirit to consult with ancestors. Their authority came not from their personal wisdom, but from their perceived emptiness, their capacity to become a clean conduit for a force beyond themselves. This concept bridges the vast gap between the gods who spoke worlds into being and ordinary people who needed to hear that creative voice. It democratized divine speech, suggesting that while not everyone could command reality, anyone could potentially listen to its source through a chosen mediator. But how could a mortal mind possibly handle the raw, universe-shaping power of a god's words without being shattered? The answer may lie not just in the person, but in the very structure of the language they used. The shape of a letter could hold the power of a thunderstorm. For cultures that saw words as cosmic tools, the very material of language, its sounds and its script, had to be a worthy vessel for such immense force. This gave rise to the concept of sacred languages and alphabets, writing systems where each character was far more than a simple sound. They were intricate symbols representing fundamental cosmic principles. The Hebrew Aleph-Bet is a perfect example. The first letter, Aleph, is silent. It represents the primordial breath before creation, the unspoken potential from which all other sounds emerge. It is not a letter for a word, but the concept of beginning itself. Similarly, in the elegant curves of the Sanskrit Devanagari script, every stroke is considered a manifestation of divine energy. The language of Sanskrit is called Divavani, the speech of the gods, and its precise, vibrational quality is not a matter of preference, but of necessity. A Vedic chant recited with even a slight mispronunciation was not just incorrect, it was ineffective, like a key cut with the wrong teeth. The power was believed to lie in the exact sonic frequency the words produced. This principle extends beyond Hinduism. The classical Arabic of the Quran is revered as the literal, uncreated word of God, a perfect revelation that cannot be truly translated without losing its divine essence. Its written form is itself a sacred art, with calligraphy transforming holy verses into visual representations of God's speech. Why would the form of a language be so critical? It reflects a belief in the profound materiality of words. The sound waves created by a chant, the ink used to write a holy text, the very parchment it was written on, were not neutral carriers. They were part of the magic, the physical components of a spiritual technology. The word was not an abstract idea, it was a tangible force that required the proper channel to flow through. If a specific sequence of sounds and shapes could summon a deity or ensure a good harvest, it stands to reason that this same power was thought to be woven into the fabric of the world itself, waiting to be read by those who knew how to look. The world itself is a frozen conversation. Every river flows along the path of its first spoken command, and every star burns in obedience to its original name. This is the deeper layer of divine speech, the idea that creation was not a one-time event but an ongoing discourse. The cosmos is not a static object, it is a dynamic utterance that is constantly being spoken into existence. The ancient Greeks gave this concept a powerful name, logos. It meant far more than a simple word. It was the underlying rational principle of the universe, the divine reasoning that gives order and meaning to all things. In this worldview, the laws of nature are not cold, impersonal rules. They are the visible grammar of a cosmic language. Gravity is not just a force, it is a statement being made. The cycle of the seasons is a recurring stanza in an endless poem. This philosophical idea connects directly to the narrative myths we have explored. It answers the question of what happened after the gods first spoke. Their initial creative words did not fade away. They became the permanent, invisible architecture of reality, the foundational code that keeps everything running. This leads to a fascinating corollary, the belief that every single thing in this structured cosmos possesses a true name. This is not the common label we use for convenience, like tree or river. The true name is the vibrational essence of the thing itself, the unique sonic key that resonates with its core being and its place in the cosmic order. To know and speak the true name of a stone or a stream was not just to identify it, but to interact with its fundamental nature, to touch the very logos that formed it. This offers a vision of a universe that is profoundly interconnected, where all of existence is woven together by threads of divine speech. How does this contrast with the way we see the world today? Our modern scientific understanding seeks to explain reality through observable laws and mathematical formulas, a magnificent and powerful approach. Yet the ancient view of the logos presents a complementary truth, one of inherent meaning and intelligent structure. It suggests that we live not in a random cosmos, but inside a grand, intelligible narrative that is still being told. For a shaman, a chant was a direct command to the sky. For a modern linguist, it is a sequence of arbitrary sounds. This is the great rift that opened between the ancient and modern worlds, a fundamental schism in how we understand the very nature of language. The mythological worldview we have been exploring, where words are woven into the fabric of reality, collides head-on with the foundational principle of modern linguistics, the concept of arbitrariness. This principle states that the connection between a word and the thing it represents is purely a matter of social agreement. There is no inherent reason why the combination of sounds in the word tree should connect to that tall, leafy plant. We could just as easily call it a blick or a zorn, and as long as everyone agreed, it would work just as well. The word has no magical, intrinsic link to the object. It is a symbol, a convenient tag. This scientific perspective sees language as a magnificent evolutionary adaptation, a tool for social cooperation and complex thought, but a tool nonetheless. It is a system we built, not a cosmic force we discovered. This view disenchants the universe, transforming it from a living, speaking presence into a silent, mechanistic system of cause and effect. The river no longer flows because it is obeying its true name. It flows because of gravity and geology. The rain does not come because of a perfect chant. It comes because of atmospheric pressure and temperature. The world falls silent, and we are left speaking into the quiet. So what was truly lost in this great transition? We lost a universe that listened. We lost the profound sense of participation, the feeling that our voices were part of an ongoing, meaningful dialogue with creation itself. Our words became smaller, more personal, and far less potent. But what did we gain? We gained a powerful form of objectivity. By separating words from the world, we gained the ability to analyze that world on its own terms, free from the constraints of magical thinking. This was the essential precondition for the rise of modern science. We could now dissect the river without fearing we were wounding a spirit, and analyze the rain without assuming our thoughts were altering its path. This new clarity allowed us to build a different kind of power, the power of technology and empirical knowledge. Yet, even in our disenchanted world, powerful echoes of the old belief persist. Why do we feel a strange charge when we hear our own name called in a crowd? Why do words of hate or love feel like physical blows or warm embraces? Why does a legally spoken vow in a courtroom, a set of arbitrary sounds, carry the tangible force of the entire state? And why do we instinctively lower our voices in a library or a grand cathedral, as if the silence itself is a sacred presence that must not be disturbed? These are the lingering ghosts of divine speech, the faint but undeniable resonance of a time when we knew in our bones that to speak was to act. The ancient power may have receded, but it has not entirely vanished. It whispers to us still in the moments when language feels less like a tool and more like a force of nature. A presidential oath of office is more than a promise, it is a transformation. The moment the final words are spoken, a private citizen becomes the head of state, their legal and social reality irrevocably altered by a specific sequence of sounds. This is a performative utterance, a modern echo of the ancient spells that sought to reshape reality through declaration alone. We see this same power in a courtroom when a judge declares, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," instantly creating a new legal bond where none existed before. These are not descriptions of a pre-existing situation, they are actions performed by speaking. The words themselves do the work, just as a divine command once summoned light from darkness. This formal, legal framework is one of the clearest places where our culture still treats certain phrases as reality-altering tools, but the legacy extends far beyond official ceremonies. Consider the personal mantra, the whispered affirmation of "I am enough" or "I am capable." For many, this is not just positive thinking, it is a deliberate act of self-creation, a small-scale version of speaking an identity into being. The underlying belief in neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, is that the language we use to describe our experiences can literally rewire our neurological pathways, changing our perception and thus our personal reality. In certain spiritual and entrepreneurial circles, people talk openly about speaking things into existence, setting intentions into the universe through the power of their declared word. Where does this persistent intuition come from, if not from a deep, ancestral memory that words are not just labels but active forces? Even our casual language betrays this hidden belief. We speak of a self-fulfilling prophecy where a prediction, simply by being spoken, makes itself come true. We feel the sting of a verbal attack as if it were a physical blow, and we feel the warmth of a compliment as a genuine embrace. We understand on an instinctive level that words have consequences that ripple through our emotional and social worlds, shaping our relationships and our sense of self. These are the faint but undeniable whispers of divine speech in our disenchanted age. The vessel may have changed from a sacred chant to a daily affirmation, and the authority may have shifted from a god to a judge or to our own inner voice, but the core mechanism remains strikingly familiar. We are still using words as instruments of change, still holding onto the hope that the right phrase, spoken with the right intention, can build a new world, even if that world is only the one inside our own minds. Your own inner monologue is a quiet, continuous act of creation. Every time you tell yourself you are not good enough or that a challenge is too great, you are not just describing a feeling, you are building a wall. Conversely, when you affirm your own capability and speak with kindness to yourself, you are not just being optimistic, you are laying the foundation for a different kind of day. This is the personal logos, the creative narrative you author with your own voice, both internally and aloud. We may not command the sun to rise with a word, but modern psychology and neuroscience affirm that our self-talk directly shapes our neural pathways, influencing our emotional state, our resilience in the face of difficulty, and the very actions we take. The stories we repeat to ourselves become the architecture of our perceived reality. Think of a simple phrase like, "I am terrible at public speaking." When spoken, even internally, it is not a neutral observation. It is a command that triggers a cascade of physiological and psychological responses, from increased anxiety to a self-fulfilling prophecy of stumbling through a presentation. Now reframe that declaration. I am learning to communicate more effectively. The underlying reality may be the same, a discomfort with speaking, but the words used to describe it are no longer a prison sentence. They become a pathway, opening the door to growth instead of confirming a permanent flaw. This is the practical magic of intentional language. It is about shifting from a narrative of fixed identity to one of dynamic possibility. How many of the limits you experience were first spoken into existence by your own lips? This power extends far beyond the self. The promises we make and keep or break are the threads that weave the fabric of our social world. When you tell a friend you will be there for them, those words create a tangible expectation, a small reality of trust. To honor that word is to reinforce that reality, to build a stronger relationship. To dismiss it is to tear at that fabric, creating a rift of disappointment. Our speech acts as a social adhesive, and its integrity directly shapes the community we inhabit. So how do we become more conscious architects of this personal and social world? It begins with listening not just to others, but to the constant stream of language flowing through your own mind. Catch the phrases that diminish you and challenge their authority. Choose words that affirm your agency, not your helplessness. Speak promises with the gravity of an ancient oath, understanding that your word is a tool of creation. In a world saturated with careless communication, where words are often used as weapons or wasted as noise, this mindful approach is a radical act. It is a way to reclaim a fragment of that ancient power, to build a more resilient and compassionate reality, one deliberate word at a time. A single tweet can ignite a global firestorm, yet a heartfelt apology can extinguish it just as quickly. Our words have not lost their power, only our reverence for wielding them. We live in an age of unprecedented communication, yet our language often feels cheapened, stripped of the sacred weight our ancestors instinctively understood. Every day we are bombarded by a torrent of information, from breaking news alerts to endless social media arguments, where words are used as disposable tools for attention or weapons for attack. This constant noise has devalued our currency of communication, making it harder to distinguish a meaningful promise from an empty platitude. But what if we could consciously reverse this trend? What if we could re-enchant our language, recovering a sense of its inherent power and treating our own speech with the solemnity of a sacred vow? This is not a call to return to a mythical past, but to actively cultivate a more mindful and ethical relationship with the words we use. It begins with a simple but profound shift in awareness, a commitment to precision and truth. Before speaking or writing, we can pause and ask ourselves a few essential questions. Is what I am about to say true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? This ancient filter, found in many wisdom traditions, immediately cuts through the careless impulse to fill silence with noise. It forces us to consider the ethical impact of our words, to see them not as neutral sounds, but as forces that can build up or tear down a person's inner world. This mindfulness extends to the stories we tell. Reviving the art of storytelling is not about becoming a professional novelist, but about recognizing that we are all narrators of our own lives and communities. When we share our personal struggles and triumphs with honesty, we are not just relaying events, we are weaving a tapestry of shared meaning and resilience. We are using language to connect and heal, creating empathy where there was only distance. This practice stands in direct opposition to the language of deception and harm, reminding us that every word carries a moral choice. On a practical level, we can restore integrity by making our promises smaller and more meaningful. Instead of grand, easily broken declarations, we can commit to tiny, unshakable oaths. I will call when I said I would. I will complete the one small task I promised. Each kept word, no matter how minor, rebuilds the muscle of trust and reinforces the power of your speech. We can also seek out and create beauty in language, whether through poetry, song, or simply taking the time to find the perfect word to express a complex feeling. This appreciation for precision and artistry re-infuses our communication with a sense of the sacred. It treats language not as a blunt instrument, but as a delicate and powerful craft. The great literary traditions of the world, from the epic poems of Homer to the spiritual verses of Rumi, have always served as reservoirs for this enchanted view of words. They remind us that language at its best does not just convey information, it transmits wisdom, evokes beauty, and binds communities together across generations. To re-sacralize our speech is to participate in this timeless human endeavor, to use our voices not as weapons of chaos, but as tools for building a world where our words are once again worthy of trust. The firelight dances on the faces of the listeners, and the bard's voice rises and falls with the rhythm of an ancient epic. He is not merely reciting a story about a long-dead king. With every description of the hero's courage, he is actively weaving that same courage into the hearts of the warriors before him. When he recounts the gods establishing the sacred laws, he is not describing a past event, he is re-anchoring those laws in the present moment. In a world without written records, the bard was the living library, the walking constitution, and the spiritual guide. His memory was the vessel holding the entire identity of his people, and his spoken words were the ritual that kept that identity alive. Forgetting a story was not an artistic failure, it was a cosmic risk, a tear in the very fabric of their understood reality. The regular recitation of these epic tales was a form of world maintenance, a periodic tuning of the community to the fundamental frequencies of its own existence. The bard's role was therefore sacred. He was a custodian of potent speech, using narrative not to escape the world, but to sustain it. His words shaped the moral compass of the young, justified the authority of the chieftain, and reminded everyone of their place within a grand cosmic order. This is divine speech brought down to a human scale. Where a god might speak a mountain into being, the bard spoke a code of honor into the spirit of his tribe. Where a priest might chant to ensure the sun's return, the bard sang to ensure the return of cultural memory and shared purpose. His voice was the glue that held the community together across generations. So, who carries this torch today? The modern novelist building intricate worlds, the filmmaker whose visual stories shape our collective consciousness, the podcaster weaving narratives that help us understand a complex present, all are inheritors of this ancient legacy. They may not sing of literal gods, but they still tell the stories that define us, challenge us, and ultimately bind us together. We are, at our core, storytelling beings, creatures who make sense of our lives and our universe through narrative. Yet this very dependence on story leads us to a final, haunting frontier. If our reality is built from and understood through language, what lies beyond its descriptive power? What truths are so vast, so fundamental, that they forever escape the cage of any words we might use? The most profound truth a mystic can utter is that they are utterly speechless. After a direct encounter with the divine, with the source of all being, they consistently return with the same bewildered report. It cannot be described. This is the fascinating paradox that lies at the heart of countless mystical traditions. After exploring how words can build worlds, we now confront their ultimate limitation, the frontier where language itself breaks down. In Taoism, the very first line of the Tao Te Ching makes this stunning admission. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The moment you try to name the ultimate, unifying principle of the universe, you have already lost it. You have reduced the infinite to a finite concept, trapped the ocean in a thimble. This is not because the Tao is secret, but because it is too vast, too fundamental, to be contained by any symbol or sound. We see a parallel approach in the Christian mystical tradition known as negative theology, or apophatic theology. Here, theologians and saints argued that human language is completely inadequate to describe God's true nature. Instead of saying what God is, which is impossible, they could only articulate what God is not. God is not finite. God is not changing. God is not a being among other beings. This path of negation, of stripping away all limiting attributes, was the only way to approach the ineffable reality. Why would the ultimate reality be considered unspeakable? Because the tool we use to describe our normal, everyday world is simply not equipped for the job. Language is a net designed to catch fish in the sea of our experience, but it cannot catch the sea itself. The source of all creation necessarily exists outside of the linguistic structures it used to build that creation. It is the silence from which the first word emerged, and to which all words must eventually return. This acknowledgement is not a failure, but an act of profound humility and depth. It places a sacred boundary around the power of divine speech, reminding us that for all its world-shaping might, language is a map, not the territory. The most real things might be those that forever escape the cage of our descriptions. This inherent limitation of language, however, does not render it powerless. In fact, it is this very gap between word and reality that gives rise to its most dangerous and deceptive application, the deliberate use of speech not to reveal truth, but to conceal it. A spoken curse could cling to a person like a shadow, following them to the edge of the world. For every myth about a word that could heal or create, there exists a darker twin, a story where that same power is twisted to break and destroy. This is the shadow of the word, the terrifying potential for speech to become a weapon of malice, deception, and control. Ancient heroes were felled not only by swords but by slander, their reputations shattered by poisonous whispers that turned their own allies against them. The Greek warrior Palamedes, credited with inventing the alphabet, was falsely accused of treason through forged evidence and cunning lies, leading to his execution by those who once celebrated him. His story is a stark reminder that a lie, once released, can kill as surely as any blade. Prophecies themselves, those divine utterances, were often instruments of tragic manipulation. The oracle's prediction that King Oedipus would kill his father and marry his mother set in motion the very actions that made the horror come true. The words did not merely foresee the future, they actively engineered it, demonstrating how a spoken declaration can become an inescapable trap. This dark principle reveals the fundamental neutrality of linguistic power. The same cosmic mechanism that allows a shaman's chant to summon rain allows a witch's hex to summon blight. The energy is identical, only the intention is reversed. A blessing fosters connection and growth, while a curse severs bonds and incites decay. The power itself is empty, a raw force waiting for our will to give it direction. In our modern world, this ancient dynamic plays out on a colossal scale. Hate speech is not just offensive language, it is a verbal curse designed to dehumanize and incite violence, its echoes rippling through history with devastating consequences. A false accusation launched on social media can destroy a life in hours, a digital age version of a destructive spell. And systematic disinformation, the propaganda used by empires and regimes, is the ultimate dark art of speech, a sustained incantation meant to reshape an entire population's perception of reality, turning truth to lies and neighbors into enemies. Recognizing this dual potential is not meant to make us fear our own voices, but to awaken a profound sense of responsibility. If our words can build worlds, they can also burn them down. This understanding forces a crucial question upon us. How do we wield a power that is morally neutral, a force that can just as easily bless as it can blight? Confronting this darkness is the necessary step toward imagining its opposite, a vision of speech in its most purified and idealized form, where words are used not for control, but for the highest form of creation. A prayer whispered into the wind is not a one-sided plea, but the start of a conversation. This relational view of speech transforms the cosmos from a silent object to be controlled into a living, responsive presence with which we can commune. Across countless indigenous and earth-based traditions, the world is not a collection of resources but a society of beings. A river has a spirit, a mountain possesses a voice, and the forest listens. In this animated universe, rituals of speech are acts of engagement. A shaman singing to the spirit of the hunt is not issuing a command, but asking for permission and offering thanks. A farmer praying for rain is participating in a relationship of mutual care with the sky. Here, prayer becomes a form of sacred etiquette, a way of maintaining right relationship with the powerful, conscious forces that sustain life. It is a dialogue built on the principle of reciprocity. You speak to the land with respect, and in turn, you listen for its guidance in the patterns of the seasons and the behavior of the animals. Your voice is just one thread in a vast, woven tapestry of sound and meaning that includes the howl of the wolf, the rustle of the leaves, and the crash of the ocean waves. This worldview cultivates a profound sense of kinship and humility. You are not a master speaking to silent servants, but a participant speaking within a grand, cosmic community. How different this is from the posture that often emerges from a disenchanted world. When the universe is seen as a silent, mechanical system, our speech becomes a monologue of control. We issue commands to our technology, we dictate terms to nature, and we often speak without any expectation of a response from the world around us. The focus shifts from relationship to resource extraction, from dialogue to declaration. The ancient model of divine dialogue challenges this isolation. It suggests that our loneliness in the cosmos may be a consequence of our own failure to listen, a result of having forgotten how to speak with the world instead of merely at it. What might we hear if we approached the world not as engineers, but as conversational partners, ready once again to engage in the oldest dialogue of all? This shift from monologue to dialogue is perhaps the most urgent evolution our species could undertake. For millennia, the dominant model of power was a singular voice speaking downward, a divine king or a creator god issuing commands that shaped a passive reality. This top-down structure deeply influenced human civilization, encouraging us to see the natural world as a resource to be managed and controlled through our own declarative will. But a different, older thread of understanding has always existed, one that views the cosmos not as a silent kingdom but as a vibrant community. In countless indigenous worldviews, the world is not an it but a thou. A river is a relative with its own consciousness, a mountain is an elder with its own story, and the wind carries messages for those who know how to listen. In this reality, powerful speech is not about command and control, it is about invitation and response. A hunter does not command the deer to appear, he sings a song of respect, asking the spirit of the forest for a gift and promising gratitude in return. This is a conversation, a reciprocal exchange where humanity holds just one voice among many. This dialogic model transforms our role from masters of the universe to participants within it. Our words become threads in a larger web of communication, rather than tools to dominate the web itself. What would our politics, our agriculture, our very daily lives look like if we truly adopted this perspective? If we saw our language not as a means to impose our will, but as a way to listen more deeply and foster right relationship with the living systems that support us. This is not a return to a primitive past, but an ascent to a more sophisticated and sustainable consciousness. It recognizes that the most profound creative acts are not solitary declarations, but collaborative conversations. This partnership model finds its deepest roots in the very beginning of things, in the primordial moment where the potential for all relationship first stirred. The entire cosmos hums with a silent, pervasive music. This is the ultimate refinement of divine speech, the idea that reality is not built from solid matter, but from vibration. In this esoteric worldview, sound itself is the primary substance of the universe, the raw material from which all form and consciousness crystallizes. Eastern philosophies give this concept a powerful name, Shabda. Shabda is not merely audible noise, it is the subtle, divine resonance that precedes and underlies all manifest creation. It is the eternal, uncreated word from which all temporary words emerge. Within this vibrational cosmos, certain sounds are considered fundamental. In Hindu cosmology, these are the bija mantras, the seed syllables. The most renowned is Om, often described as the sonic form of the Absolute, the vibration that contains all other vibrations within it. But there are many others, each one a unique frequency. The mantra Shrim is not a word for the goddess Lakshmi, it is the vibrational essence of prosperity itself. The sound Shrim is the core resonance of the heart and divine energy. Chanting these syllables is not an act of asking or describing, it is an act of tuning. Just as a tuning fork vibrating at a specific pitch can cause a silent guitar string to hum in sympathy, chanting a bija mantra is believed to resonate with the very cosmic principle it represents, aligning the individual's consciousness with that fundamental force. This takes us to the most abstract and profound level of our exploration. The universe is not a finished object that was spoken into being once, long ago. It is a continuous, dynamic manifestation of divine sound, a perpetual song of creation. Every atom, every star, every thought is a modulation of this infinite, ongoing vibration. How does this challenge our modern, materialist perceptions? Our science teaches us to see a world of separate objects, of quarks and galaxies. This ancient wisdom asks us to hear a universe of interconnected frequencies, a single, flowing river of resonance where what we perceive as solid is merely sound moving slowly enough to be touched. This metaphysical view collapses the distance between the inner world of our mind and the outer world of the cosmos. If reality is vibrational, then our own thoughts and speech are not just internal events, they are tangible forces that contribute to the universal symphony. Every cynical thought lowers your personal frequency, while a word of genuine gratitude raises it, subtly altering your interaction with the fabric of existence itself. This brings our entire journey full circle, From the gods who sang worlds into being to the profound power we hold in our own throats and minds in this present moment. What kind of reality are you humming into existence with the quality of your own inner and outer speech? Every post you write is a small act of mythology. The digital world we now inhabit is the newest and most vast landscape where the ancient principles of divine speech are playing out in real time. A single viral tweet can ignite a global movement, its hashtag functioning like a modern-day incantation that summons a community into being. A heartfelt podcast monologue can forge a deep sense of connection among thousands of isolated listeners, weaving a shared narrative that feels as tangible as any physical space. Our words, amplified by networks of light and data, now possess a reach and a permanence our ancestors could never have conceived. They are etched not on clay or parchment, but into the seemingly endless memory of the cloud, where they can be summoned and reanimated at a moment's notice for good or for ill. This digital expanse has become our new oral tradition, a global campfire where stories are told, retold, and reshaped at the speed of a click, collectively authoring our shared sense of what is real and what is true. Yet this immense power often feels weightless in our hands. We type and we swipe with a casualness that would have terrified a Norse skald or an Egyptian priest for whom a word was an unbreakable bond. We unleash curses in the form of hateful comments and deploy deceptive spells through coordinated disinformation campaigns, all while forgetting the fundamental law echoed in every myth we have explored, that words are active forces with consequences. The digital realm has not nullified the old wisdom, it has supercharged it. A public promise made online carries the weight of 1,000 witnesses, much like an oath sworn on Tyrs ring. A lie, once released into the ecosystem of social media, takes on a life of its own, hunting its target with the grim inevitability of an ancient Greek curse. So we are left with the most pressing question of our time. Are we wielding this cosmic power with the corresponding wisdom? The myths taught that creation and destruction are two sides of the same spoken word. We see this duality reflected in our feeds every single day, in the movements that champion justice and the mobs that destroy reputations, in the communities that offer support and the algorithms that foster division. Our digital utterances are the modern equivalent of sacred chants, and we are all, for better or worse, the untrained priests of this new reality. This brings us to the final synthesis of our entire journey, a chance to gather all these threads and see the breathtaking tapestry they form. The journey from a god's first command to our own digital echoes reveals a single, unbroken thread. Across every culture and every age, we find a shared, stubborn intuition that words are not passive labels, but active participants in the world. They do not simply describe what is, they help to determine what will be. This is the core insight of the lost art of divine speech. The creative power of the word is its most fundamental quality, from the cosmic vibration of to the legal utterance that transforms a citizen into a president. But with that creative power comes an unavoidable ethical weight. The same mechanism that allows a blessing to heal allows a curse to destroy, forcing upon us a profound responsibility for the worlds we build with our voices. This responsibility is magnified when we recognize the relational nature of true communication. Language at its most potent is not a monologue of control, but a dialogue with the living cosmos, a reciprocal exchange that demands we listen as much as we speak. So what is this lost art, if not the literal magic of summoning storms? It is the recovery of reverence. It is the choice to treat our words with the gravity of an unbreakable oath, understanding that each one, from a casual comment to a formal promise, lays another brick in the reality we all share. It is the practice of intention, of pausing to ask if what we are about to say is true, necessary, and kind. And ultimately, it is the commitment to integrity, where our spoken words and our lived actions align, weaving a world of trust instead of chaos. This ancient wisdom does not ask us to abandon our modern understanding of language, but to enrich it. It invites us to see our daily speech not as a mundane utility, but as a continuous, collaborative act of creation. How will you now choose to wield this quiet, persistent magic in the story of your own life? We began our journey with a silent void and a single, world-shattering word. Now we arrive at a profound and personal crossroads, holding a timeless truth in our hands. This entire exploration has illuminated a universal human recognition, one that echoes from the earliest myths to our most modern science. Words are not passive labels we stick onto a pre-existing reality. They are active, living forces that shape our individual lives and our shared world. The gods who chanted the stars into alignment were embodying a principle that still pulses through our own daily conversations. Every time you define your capabilities, you are not describing a fixed self, you are authoring it. Every promise you keep reinforces the very fabric of trust in your community, while every careless lie frays it. The creative power of the word is not a lost supernatural force, it is a fundamental human capacity. We are all, in a very real sense, speaking our worlds into being with every sentence we utter, every story we tell, and every vow we make. Let us carry forward the wisdom of our ancestors, not as a relic, but as a living practice. Let us choose our words with the clarity of a divine command, the integrity of an unbreakable oath, and the kindness of a true blessing. Speak with the awareness that your voice, however quiet, contributes to the grand collaborative story we are all telling together. I invite you to reflect on the words you choose today and the realities they are actively building around you. If this journey into the heart of language has sparked a new thought, share your reflections in the comments below. To continue exploring the deepest mysteries of our past, subscribe for more.